child.
In this video, we finally have an MGB on Hubnut. It's about time. It's taken a while. One of those reasons is I used to have to write about these things all the time in the classic car media, and I got slightly bored of doing that. There's only so many ways you can describe rust. And on paper, this isn't that exciting a car. We've got a big, heavy four-cylinder engine with its origins from the 1940s. The front suspension is also from the 1940s. Simple leaf springs at the back. Is it really that exciting? The driving dynamics tell a very different story, and we'll get to those in a moment. But let's talk a bit about Mgb history first of all. Conceived in the late 1950s to replace the very pretty MGA, the Mgb uses monocoque construction, probably inspired by its smaller sibling, the MG Midget, which began life as the Austin Healey Sprite. Monocoque construction meant more room for passengers and greater strength without the need for separate chassis or the wood floorboards that MGAs had. So it was a big update in that regard, but the mechanical package was initially very similar. It's a 1.8 version of the B series engine, producing about 94 brake horsepower. They did improve that engine through the MGB's lifetime, gaining a 5-bearing crank and a better gearbox as well. So a lot of production changes throughout the car's life. This is from 1967 when the Mark II came into being, but this is very late Mark I. The Mark I had a free synchro 4-speed gearbox, and in November of this year they replaced that with a much stronger unit. 1965 they introduced a very pretty MGB GT version, but it had to be a roadster. We haven't got perfect weather for a roadster. We don't care. We're British. We're going to drive around with the roof off nonetheless. In fact, talking of roof, come over here. This one has no roof. When the MGB first came out, you had to build the roof from a kit of parts. We've got the kit of parts in the boot here. Should we need to, we can make ourselves a hood. I think from about 1965 there came the option of a fold down roof, but it didn't actually become standard equipment, I don't think, until 1969. But I think it cleans up the lines quite nicely. And while we're taking in these very pretty lines, we can discuss the fact that Don Hayter was the man at MG who pretty much conceived the MGB in engineering and styling terms. There was some tidying done by Pininfarina. No one seems able to say how much, but that's very Pininfarina-esque. Although I think these lamps were shared with the BMC 1100. They've suddenly got a very similar look to them. Pininfarina also tidied that car up for production. But, you know, lovely details like these scalloped in headlamps, even the little indicator side light units. It's all very pretty. And they've got the shallow windscreen and wind-up windows, which was new for 1962. The MGA only ever had side screens, but these winding windows make a lot of difference, and were also a feature of the Sunbeam Alpine, a key rival of the MGB. So here we are. This one's not exactly standard, as you might notice from the gear lever. They never had a 5-speed gearbox option from the factory. They did have overdrive, and we've got a switch still remaining over here, so you can flick that with your little finger to kick in the overdrive. But the owner has carried out quite a few modifications to this car, and perhaps before we go for a drive we should have a chat with a man to ask him what he's done. So, as I mentioned, this car has a few modifications, but I think the best thing to do is probably to ask owner Tim to explain.
Hi.
What have you done to it?
Well, I've owned the car quite a long time. I've had it about 9 years. Although it looks very standard on the outside.
Yeah, even down to the steel wheels, which I love.
Yes, they are. They are a bit of a modification in themselves. It originally had pressed steel wheels at the factory because it is a 67, but because it's a roadster, it had narrower ones. They were 4.5 inch wide, whereas these are actually off of a GT, which were 5.5, which allows me to fit 185 tyres.
Excellent.
Slightly bigger because I need it for the other modifications. It's a 2 litre, it's been brought out to 2 litres with a big valve head and things like that. It's got Lotus twin cam pistons, Piper cam, lots of the things we modified over the years. We've got, instead of the original 1.5 inch carbs, it's gone into 3/4 from a Triumph. Originally had wax-stat jets on, and converted that to fixed. It's got a Ford 5-speed gearbox. Originally these were 95 horsepower. Last time this was on the rollers it was 120.
Ooh.
poly bushing and a 3/4 front roll bar are the best ways to enhance an MGB.
Okay.
A lot of people go down the big, expensive independent suspension route and big telescopic conversion kits and stuff like that. The best way to make them handle well is a set of poly bushes and a slightly bigger roll bar. It just keeps everything in the right place and just takes out a bit of the body roll, and they handle great.
Excellent. So is it still on the lever arm dampers?
It is on the front. The back has got telescopics on it, just to help with the ride quality a little bit. But the front's still on lever arms. They are slightly stiffer units that the Owners Club produce. They're about 20% stiffer.
Okay.
Another thing that MG Anoraks might notice is this isn't quite the right shade of red. This sort of year was a much richer red, darker red, called tartan red. But this actually is the red used on the 2000s era MG, which is it's just a bit brighter and it pops a little bit more.
So like flame red.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The newer flame red. I just like the colour, and it just popped a little bit more than the period.
Yeah, it just works very nicely with the bright work. Yeah.
Been a slow development over the years, and taken on track days and the continent a lot. Just back from a Portugal trip. All the pictures are on our Facebook page. Do track days. Been over the Alps in it. Done loads of stuff, and it gets quite the pounding.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And with that, we should jump straight back into the live action. So yeah, you can see why I'm particularly looking forward to this. This is a very well modified car. But let's not jump ahead. Driving position, the footwell is quite tight and offset to one side. I've still got a dip switch down there for the main beam. The gearbox falls very nicely to hand. The steering wheel, lovely wood rim style wheel is, yeah, that's really, really nice and comfortable. The handbrake, less comfortable. It's actually kind of embedded in my leg, but apparently that's where MG thought it should be. Safety fast was always the motto with MG, and perhaps it's very safe to have the handbrake right there. I'm not entirely sure. We need to do some very important things like the windscreen wiper test, so I'll just pop the ignition on. I think it's this one. We've got no labels, so we're guessing. I think that one's screen off. There we go. And then I can put the wipers on like so. There we go. So good overlap, no triangle of doom, but they are dinky little wipers. American MGBs later on had triple wipers, and the midgets also, to pass their tests, because they had to wipe much more of the windscreen. But we got just the two here. Wipers always park in front of the driver, regardless of whether it's right-hand drive or left-hand drive. The wipers always park where the driver sits. That was just a preference for the time. Enough wiper waffle. Let's fire up the engine. So straight away we can hear that's sounding pretty purposeful, a little lumpy, perhaps because of that hotter camshaft, but MGs always sounded amazing. Even in standard form, the MGBs always sounded like nothing else. They had this wonderful exhaust notes, but yeah, it just, I don't know how they did it, how they made what's a fairly ordinary family car engine, the BMC B series engine, that made it sound absolutely immense. So we're driving along, it is a little on the bouncy side on these slightly rougher minor roads, but compared to the MGAs, the Bs were always a bit softer. This one's being stiffened up again, so maybe it's more like an MGA, but we've got a nice big bonnet in front of us, excellent visibility of course. And yeah, you're just waiting for the right sorts of roads, so let's go and find some. Oh. Yeah, I've driven quite a few MGs. I'm not sure I've ever driven a B that sounds this good and goes this well. So yeah, like he said, he reckons about 120 brake horse against the original 95, and it makes a big difference, especially in the mid-range torque. It's not all just top-end power. And this, well, I think it's the Type 9 Ford gearbox. It just feels absolutely appropriate. A lovely snickety feel. Oh, yeah, that is an entertaining soundtrack. It's very windswept. This is old school open roof motoring. None of those wind deflectors or anything, so you don't actually feel the wind. It's properly in my hair, and just adds to the experience. If you wanted a bit more refinement, obviously the GT offered that with its fixed roof, and it offered a bit more speed. Although the GT was heavier, the better aerodynamics meant that you could top 100 miles an hour quite easily. In stock form, the Roadster couldn't quite get there, but the 5-speed gearbox means now we're cruising along at 60 miles an hour doing 3,000 revs. It's as relaxing as if it was an overdrive gearbox. And you lose a bit of transmission whine compared to a stock MGB, but I can't say it really detracts from the experience. It still feels very mechanical and adds some serious improvements, like the fact that ratios are stacked closer together, make it much better for accelerating, keeping the engine on boil. Okay, clear road. Oh wow, I've never driven an MGB that revs like this before. I've driven an awful lot of them. This one just feels absolutely incredible. A superb exhaust note is kind of standard fit on a B, but my heck, this one sounds immense and it just revs up so quickly. But the beauty is, all this fun comes with something that's about as exotic as a potato. It's just a regular B series engine under the bonnet, when not tweaked up quite as much as this example. So it's no harder to look after than an Austin Cambridge. So very popular with DIY mechanics because they're so utterly simple. And I think that's a large part of their success. Over 500,000 of them sold. Slightly ruined by the traffic, but I don't care. I'm still smiling. I don't care about the other traffic. Even driving at 35 miles an hour behind a Vauxhall Vivaro van, this is fun, this is entertaining. We're at one with nature. It's, yeah, this is the British sports car experience. But unlike MGAs, earlier T-types, arguably even the Austin Healey 3000s, this is one of the most comfortable ways to enjoy that raw British sports car appeal, because they did make it a bit more refined over the A. Got the exhaust popping under deceleration. This is crazy, crazy fun. But it's not stupid quick. There's some modifications out there for MGBs, but frankly it's too much power. This is power you can use on the road and actually keep your driving license. And out of the box, the steering, rack and pinion steering, is absolutely superb. You don't seem to put very much angle in at all. You almost think your way around the bends. All the fun of the fair. Ho! Tim has definitely built one of the best driving MGBs I have ever driven. It just goes to show that a few tweaks can make something that is already a lot of fun even better still. So well done, Tim, and thank you very much for letting me have a drive. Thank you for watching. Don't forget you can head to the store and buy lots of lovely merchandise or support us. See links in the description below. Otherwise, I shall see you in a future video. Farewell.